Yep, I'm here. And by the way, everyone out there on YouTube and everybody watching on my end, welcome. 5D Transformations. Partnering with the one and only my very good friend, marriage and family therapist. Very has a great understanding of MBTI as well and psychology. My good friend Rafi, and we also have a few other friends with us today. Um, what's up, Rafi? Let him know. Let him know. Where you coming from, where your background, everything like that, a little bit.
Yeah. Good to talk to you, Johnny.
Yep.
I'm what's called a resident in marriage and family therapy in Virginia. So I work out of a private practice a couple of years now, and work across a lot of different issues, but mostly like working with couples. Couples therapy, marriage counseling, and just helping couples kind of see the cycles and patterns that are happening that you experience, but it's kind of hard to put into words or to understand why it's happening and what's fueling it. So that's just what I'm really interested in. But you kind of have to learn a little bit of everything just to keep up. But yeah, so that's a professional level, and then Johnny, of course, you and I, we go back to, you're the oldest friend I have.
Oh yes.
Sixth grade.
Same here. Unbelievable. We've been friends for over 20 years now, and we're not even 30 yet. So that should tell you a lot.
Wow. That's 2 decades. That's 2 decades.
Two
Yeah.
decades. Wow, man, that's like crazy, man. And he's also the person that actually was the first person to ever that ever made me aware of MBTI. I remember you told me he was like, "Hey, take this personality test thing." I was like, "Okay." And then I tested it, and it said the champion idealist after I tested it, and I was like, "Wow, that sounds like me." I was like, "Champion and idealist. It sounds cool." And that ended up aligning with the ENFP archetype. Now, at this time, I didn't know anything about ENFP, all that. I just knew champion idealist. That sounds like me. And then you got me started, Rafi. So shout out to you, man, into the MBTI science.
So that's a good place to start, Johnny. So, as you know, we're both champion idealists, ENFP. And then here, we have our friend Asad with me on my end. He's an INFP, so close cousin. You think you start off just breaking down what ENFP is and how we work?
Absolutely. So essentially, with ENFPs, and I'm just gonna give each individual. If I describe the individual type, I'll just really just focus in on them. So to give you an idea, ENFPs, we are the idealists, and we also are the feelers. But the thing about us is that we have a introverted feeling, which for people who don't know what that is, essentially we can really tap into our individual emotions. And what this begins to do is it allows us to have a depth of understanding in regard to the range of emotion that people experience in the world, mainly because we're able to tap into the range of emotion that we individually experience. So the more that you learn more about your own emotions and build that emotional intelligence of yourself, it just so happens that everyone else out there, because they're humans and we share, a similar biology, they're experiencing the same things, right? So then it gives us a mastery of, wow, well, if I felt this way, I'm sure they probably felt this way in a similar situation. And as we connect more of that to more and more, oh, we felt this way in this scenario, in that scenario, and I felt this way in this scenario. And then you gather so much data on yourself and others' experiences, you begin to have a really wide range of the emotion that people have, the values that people have in regard to why they do things, their motivations, because you're able to tap into what were my motivations and what are my motivations relative to their motivations. So you begin to build this database of understanding what feeling people experience and what those feelings trigger people to do. Like, what are people triggered to do when they feel a certain way? You know,
That's so that's so interesting. So, also was just telling me like this is the function that really helps with empathy and understanding what other people's emotions are through understanding your own.
Exactly. That's the power of FI, actually, that people don't realize is it because you're so tapped into your own experiences, because we're in a similar world. So let's say somebody took you. Let's say you
And
lost.
my friends tell me how they wish I had.
Let's say you lost like $100. You know how that would make you feel. Like, dang, I lost $100. So now if someone else tells you I lost $100, you have an idea of how they feel about that, because we both know it didn't feel good to lose $100. Now, and that's if you needed it, right? So the power of FI, we get a lot of value in different experiences, and we can gain value from like the good and bad experiences. Whereas other types, like I notice with types that have introverted thinking instead of introverted feeling. So people that aren't a lot of people that are not like ENFPs, they will want perfection a lot of the time, or they want to succeed without taking losses, which I think we all would want to do, right? But other types have a harder time gaining value from losses. ENFPs, um, they can take value from great moments, and this for INFPs as well, and low moments, because it always gives us data, and that's where we put a lot of attention on. So that's one aspect of ENFPs. And another aspect of ENFPs to keep in mind is ideas.
Well,
So,
so actually, John, if
mm-hmm.
I could, because I think there's just so much depth to this one
Yeah,
function.
yeah, mm-hmm.
John, you and I have talked about this before about how FI, like it's beautiful, but it's also like our trap. You know,
Yeah, yeah,
it's that one. It's the, and I know for me personally, I realized that until I learned how to master my FI, I would get stuck in these lows and dips and not know how to kind of get myself through them.
mm-hmm.
And you can't think your way through the FI. I feel like, and for me at least, what I learned, at least what I think was really helpful for me to learn, was the function of emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And you already kind of hit on it or hinted at it, but emotions being there to essentially. So the word emotion comes from a Latin word that means to move. And the philosophy behind it is that emotions exist to motivate us, to essentially motivate some kind of a behavior or response.
Mm-hmm.
So they're not there just to wreak havoc on our lives and make us feel all these things. They're there because they're trying to tell us something and get us to respond to it in a particular way.
Wow.
And so for me, I realized I had to figure out, what am I feeling, and what is this feeling trying to, like, what does this feeling need from me to do?
Mm.
And that was the way of kind of getting past whatever blockages or obstacles that I was going through, so I can get motivated.
Wow. I think that's amazing, Rafi. I love how you broke that down, because for a lot of types, especially like let's say you're a type that is a thinking dominant type. Let's say you have introverted thinking or extroverted thinking dominant, right? Which means it's higher up than feeling. You notice they don't really understand the purpose of the feeling a lot of the time. They don't, not because they don't want to, but it's about where your awareness is most of the time. And most of the time their awareness isn't on those feelings. And they have a hard time of finding the value in feelings, because it's like they're just triggers of emotion that are blocking me and distracting me from what I need to do. Now you'll notice with thinking types, they're generally action oriented, process oriented, meaning I want to find a good process. I want to find a good pattern. What's my career? What's my job? What role do I fit in the family? Or what is my role in the environment? And I want to do that to the best of my ability. And that's how I find value and happy feeling, because I don't have the patience to like dig into every individual emotion. So a lot of these guys will be like, well, I'm a cop, I help serve the community, and that takes care of the feeling side. But they still might ignore those underlying feelings, or those feelings that go a little bit more in depth. Now, what you mentioned is with the introverted feeler, and what I think all the types can learn from introverted feeling is introverted feeling, because it is introverted, that means it's first. So it's like, no. We can't go any place further until we deal with this feeling and what it means. And that's what introverted feelers have a hard time with, because it's like, well, why won't you just get this corporate job, or why won't you just play this role that the family wants you to play? Like, why are you making your life so difficult? Just follow the rules. Just play the game. But an introverted feeler will be like, but no, something about this morally doesn't seem right, and I can't go forward until I find out what this negative feeling is trying to tell me. So I love what you just said. It's not coming from a place of them being too emotional, which a lot of introverted feelers might feel. Like, am I too emotional? Am I too much in my feelings? Do I care too much? What it's really about is we take the time to see what that feeling is trying to tell us, like you said, Rafi, because that feeling is trying to trigger a new form of action. And if you ignore that, you're going to miss out on the second, the other half of your whole intelligence, you know?
Yeah. As you were talking, us shared another point
Mm-hmm.
about how people that have a weak FI,
Mm-hmm.
he said that introverted feeling is a judging function.
Yes.
And so people that have low FI, they have a hard time judging their own feelings to really even know what it is that their feeling means, or even what they're feeling.
Facts. Yep. That's correct. Very big point right there, because it is a judging function. So you'll notice that, like one thing
Could you,
I.
could you
Mm-hmm, go ahead.
sorry, could you actually break down the difference between judging and perceiving functions?
Absolutely. So essentially, to keep it simple, judging functions are introverted functions. So they're the functions that are introverted, meaning you experience them within. Perceiving functions are going to be extroverted functions. And just to keep it, yeah, are going to be extroverted functions, which means they're at the effect, right? So extroverted feeling isn't a judging function, but introverted feeling is a judging function. Now, what makes it a judging function, from what I understand, is that it essentially requires you to. Um, I think it's because it's essentially what is. I'm sorry. Yeah, it's what's processing the situation and making a final decision on it. Essentially, you know what I mean. So, whereas a perceiving function is left in the open. So, whatever's a perceiving function, you don't place a judgment on it. You're just experiencing it, essentially. Whereas a judging function is putting a meaning um, on top of the function. So that's kind of like the difference there. So perceiving is going to want to stay open. It's not going to really want to come to a conclusion, but a judging function is going to want to come to a conclusion. It's going to want to know, because that's going to make it feel more comfortable. And I guess that introverted extroversion aspect is, see, what makes it perceiving is that it's depending on it's basically allowing the situation to play out. That's what the extroverted is. So, for example, let's say if you have introverted feeling, that means you have extroverted thinking, right? Which means, okay, I'm gonna let everyone think, and I'm gonna respond to everyone else's judgments, and then that's, you know what I mean. And from there, I'll make a conclusion. Whereas when it comes to feeling, if you have introverted feeling, you know how you feel. You know, and you feel, you know exactly how you feel. You don't need other people to come to an understanding of how the group should feel. And you'll know how you feel so much the group can't even move you from feeling how you feel. So let's flip that now, right? And look at introvert and look at uh introverted thinking. People who have introverted thinking, similar to introverted feeling, they know exactly how they think about something. And it doesn't matter what you tell them, it doesn't matter what the group has come to a conclusion about how to think, the introverted thinker feels just as strong about whatever they thought. So you really begin to realize that introverted thinkers and introverted feelers live in a completely different world while living in the same world.
That's so interesting. I have a hard time understanding introverted thinking.
Oh, that's, man, you're talking to the right one, man. Because I've had some big realizations about introverted thinking, and introverted thinking definitely has some brilliance. And to give you like a starting idea about introverted thinking, right? If you wanted to tap into introverted thinking, imagine looking at something, right, without giving it a judgment and just watching something. Like for example, let's say people are driving, and imagine if you what you'll notice is if you look at the environment without and take your introverted feeling away, just observe the environment, you're going to naturally notice stuff in the environment. And the stuff you notice in the environment is going to trigger thoughts in your head. So I'll be looking at something and you might see a red car like, that car looks a little bit like that car looks kind of dirty. And then you might keep driving, right? And then the thing about introverted thinking, it can go deeper into whatever it's focusing on. So it will then put attention on the rims, and it's like, okay, those rims look a certain way. Then it might look, and it might observe the entire car, right? Whereas an introverted feeler, we might look at the car and be like, that red car reminds me of a car that my uncle drove, and then keep going. But we missed out on all of the detail of the car. Now, for an introverted thinker, they don't feel anything about the car. There's no feeling about the car. They're just observing it. And by observing something, whatever you observe, and I'll do an experiment with y'all right now. I want Rafi, you and Assad, look at anything in the room, and don't give it a judgment yet. Just look at something in the environment, right? And I just want you to look at it for like 5 to 10 seconds, and keep looking at it, and tell me what's starting to trigger in your mind. Don't veer away from it. Don't leave the thought of it. Just totally focus on that thing for about like 10 seconds. What's starting to trigger in your mind at whatever you're looking at?
Well, I'm noticing the details of it.
Exactly. Yep. You said it perfect. Now, what are the details that's coming in? I want you to zoom in now on the details.
I'm noticing like the angles of lines, the depth.
Mm-hmm.
The shadows.
Yep. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm noticing a pattern.
Okay. Yep. Say about 2 more things.
I'm noticing like what looks like a slight imperfection in the object.
Okay. And then give me one more.
Noticing I'm looking at this bin and I'm noticing the design of the handle and where they put it.
Okay, perfect. Now I want you to now look at one other thing in the environment and do the same thing really quickly. Notice the detail.
So I'm looking at a table.
Mm-hmm.
Noticing that this one leg looks like a check mark.
Okay.
It's a nice table.
Yep. Say like 2 things that's nice about it, and then we can. What are 2 things that make it look nice to you?
The physics of it. I just noticed. I didn't even notice it before, but like it's hard to describe. But there's like 2 parts to this table, and the legs are connected in a way that I didn't notice, and so it's a really unique design.
Boom. Okay. Now I hope Assad did Assad get to do the same thing? Did he kind of observe things?
Assad had to step out. He really just got back. He's back in the room.
Okay. So now tell Assad really quickly. We're talking about introverted thinking, Assad. Do me a favor, right? And notice something in the environment really quickly. And tell me when you're looking at something, Assad.
I'm looking at something.
Okay, now I want you to tell me what is starting to pop in your mind. Take the feeling away and just observe it. What's starting to trigger in your mind? And keep looking at that one object. Don't focus on any other object, or don't get distracted. Just tell me, if you zoom in on that one object, what's triggering in your mind right now?
The detailedness of the object.
Boom. Once again, the detail in the object. Now just give me 2 details or 3. Give me like 3 details really quickly that is triggering on you right now. If you keep focusing on it.
The design of the object is very detailed. Like it's almost as if like somebody did it, but whatever the object I'm looking at is like an art piece, and it's very like hand done.
Okay.
It's very wonderful, and the metallurgy around it is beautiful, and the symmetry that is very, very proportionate.
Perfect. Now I want Assad and Rafi, I want y'all to realize, you notice while you was observing the detail of the object, there was no feeling. You noticed that, right?
Yeah.
You can try to give it a feeling after, but in the process of noticing the detail, anything you look at, it's always giving data back to you. We're in a universe where everything we look at is always responding to us, whether we know it or not, even inanimate objects. So there's always a, a subtle communication going on. I can look at a towel and I'm getting things triggering back to me. I can look at a fan. Oh, I see the dust. So everything we look at is coming back to us with TI, right? That's because introverted thinking is connected with extroverted feeling. So extroverted feeling is literally putting its energy and having a relationship energetically with the environment, and it's getting data back. So it's not about itself anymore. Introverted feeling, remember, we were focusing on what was going on inside. But when you tap into introverted thinking, it's about getting data from the outside world. And as you continue to get more and more data, you begin to build this bank of all of these different things that you have gotten data from, which allows you to come to really good objective conclusions because you'll be, for example, they're introverted thinkers are really good at building, right? They'll be working on a car and there might be a part of the car that they're having a hard time building. And they might be like, I remember that wooden table I looked at had a design just like this. But what if I added it to the car? You see? So and that would be considered very clever, right? So it's always, so it ends up having this sophisticated data bank to where it can compare and contrast details.
So with introverted thinking, so my ex was an INTP, and so she had hero TI, and the way I like describe her, right? It's really interesting. Just like when I like look through like her lens or her perspective, she has like a whole internal construct of the world.
Yes.
Based on TI, right? Of just like the semantics of the world and how things operate, and when things don't like, I guess when things in the future do not, I guess correctly fit into that system that she has constructed in her brain, it's really hard for her to like process that. So like to like change that, it's really hard for her to process it. But once she processes it, it just becomes add on, and then she's able to like kind of like change up that world. But it's very interesting to see how like it's very systematic that that level of hero TI.
Wow, that I'm so happy you said that, and I'm happy you're here. Somebody that's worked very closely with the introverted thinker, like that was that was your girlfriend, so you got to see her kind of like on a more like not just at work. I mean, you got to kind of see that introverted thinking at work, and just like you said, imagine if you cared about details more than you cared about feeling, right? Because you're so lost in the details of something, you almost don't even have the ability to know how you feel because you're so absorbed in what you're observing. So you almost become lost in whatever you're observing.
It's like a whole world.
Yes.
I'm realizing that this is like a whole world that I don't even tap into. The thing about introverted thinking, which is like super interesting, that like there's a level of attentiveness that like I cannot fathom.
Yeah, me neither.
So me being extroverted thinking, right, and introverted feeling, it's very different. And I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm saying like it's a different perception. It's like a whole other world. It's a whole other world because like for example, like by dating one, right, and you really see like how attentive they are, like at least towards me when I was dating one. So like the level of detail, like I couldn't perceive. How could she catch on to those things?
Yeah, and imagine if that gave you energy, because that's one thing with introverted thinkers, they're actually getting energy by being lost in something, right? So think about how skilled they become at something. But you'll notice that with a lot of introverted thinkers, they'll sacrifice a lot of relationships, a lot of like having fun and being playful in order to be lost in what they're doing, because that's what's really energizing them. Talking and doing all that other stuff is draining them. Then they go back normally to what they like to do, right? Whereas, and you'll notice it's a very focused function.
INTPs, they really they really see the world almost like a project.
Wow.
Like at least when I've been dealing with the INTPs, like a lot of INTPs I've met, like no disrespect to them, they're kind of like lazy, but like in their head, it's like a project. They can identify what to fix and how to fix it very well. And for example, there would be so many issues that I would be struggling with during school that I would always go to her because she had a level of detail that she could capture in my life that she can identify quickly and be like, oh, you just need to do this, it will fix your problem, or you need to do that, and that problem will be fixed. And eventually all of those problems, those bigger problems, would be fixed. But they're really good at identifying those small problems.
Wow, very good point. Very good point. Because if you notice with extroverted thinking, it's a great function because it can gather a lot of information. But the reason why extroverted thinking tends to lack detail, which is what it's known for lacking compared to introverted thinking, is because extroverted thinking, you have to be distracted to get everyone's perspective. Meaning, for me to understand the big picture, I got to hear your idea, Assad's idea, my idea, and other people's idea, which means I'm jumping from one thought pattern to another thought pattern to another thought pattern, and then trying to bring the information together, right? Versus being so lost in one thought, I can go deeper into it.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing about extroverted thinking, though, is movement. So this is something that I've seen that TI users lack usually is execution, right? So with TE users, we can already usually see the big picture because as you grow, you kind of assort all these ideas and perceptions in your life, and you understand how fluid life can be, and you can move much more faster. So that's not you don't get caught up. You don't get caught up in the details as much, but you understand point A to point B. This is what you need to do. Let me get there, right? And so that's why I always thought the one of the most beautiful relationships, dynamics, whether it be work or an actual relationship, is the INTP ENTJ relationship, because it's a hero TE function with a hero TI function. So a good example of that is the Steve Jobs being an ENTJ and Steve Wozniak being an INTP, right? Steve Wozniak being a coder who's really good at the attentiveness and being good at the details of all the structures, but Steve Jobs was such a hero TE, knew how to execute properly. He knew how to assimilate all that TI and feed off that TI and create movement.
Great point, because it makes me think of basically introverted thinkers want to understand the every little detail of the whole, because once they understand every little detail, then they understand the whole. Whereas for extroverted thinkers, want to understand the whole, you know, and essentially it wants to use the little details. It really wants to understand the whole in order to then be able to understand the details better. It's kind of like a reverse effect. Like one needs to know every little bit of every little part in order to feel whole in what they know, whereas extroverted thinkers want to know the whole in order for the little parts to matter. You know what I mean? So that extroverted thinker feels like it's not wasting its time. And like you said, that causes the extroverted thinker, even though they might be less attentive or detail oriented, they a lot of the time it helps, because then an introverted thinker, imagine you get so lost in the details of something that doesn't even matter, and you'll notice a lot of introverted thinkers can do that.
And that's why I feel like for me, I don't pay attention to the details, is because I don't see where it connects to. I don't see how does going to the detail connect to the bigger picture or something else.
Absolutely.
A perfect example of this is that I've worked on a small little startup where it was a software startup, right? Where my partner was an INTP, right? And it's very interesting because he would get so wound up into the application of the colors and the symmetry and making sure those things are so perfect, and I would be exclaiming to him, I'm like, hey man, this is not MVP. This is not minimum viable product. Mm-hmm. You don't need to worry about the colors. You need to worry about functionality. But then he'll like beat his head over for a full day just getting the colors because he started the colors.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
But I will say though, once he gets it, it adds on to the product like in a way more beautiful fashion than I could have perceived.
Exactly. And a funny thing that brings up is while he's trying to figure this out, you notice it doesn't have anything to really do with feeling in terms of that being the cause point of his uh his I don't know, his anxiety or what he's like super locked in on. It's about patterns and figuring out how things fit and understanding the parts. That's where introverted thinking's energy is more focused toward. Whereas introverted feelers will more so be like, look, the feeling that I want is success. So that will drive us to that will be the cause point of what we're focused on versus like let's say the introverted thinker might be perfection or mastering the colors. An introverted feeler might be like, man, I just want to get this done so that I can get to this end goal. So the introverted thinker, so we both have our own motivations that are equally,
So it's like the what actually motivates is different. Like it sounds like these introverted functions are key to a person's motivation.
Yes, that's the key. Like with introverted thinkers, it's the motivation essentially is going to be something to an end goal that is separate from how they feel internally. Like it's not asking them how do I feel about what I'm doing. It's like what is it that I need to do. It's like a video game or it's solving something. You know what I mean? They're not focused. A lot of the time it's not about like the end goal. It's about
it's solving it for the sake of solving it.
Exactly. It's solving it for the sake of solving it, whatever that may be. And even though extroverted thinkers might be like, well, that's kind of like pointless, but that's how we end up having all of these creations like toilet paper or towels that look so intricate or dresses or when you start talking about intricate designs, you know, um, great architecture, like if it was up to extroverted thinkers and introverted feelers, we'd probably all be in just like just blobs. Like we'd be in metal blobs. Like, hey, man, I mean, it blocks the water. I mean, it blocks the rain, and there's warmth in here. You know what I mean? The introverted thinker is gonna be like, the design looks kind of ugly. How do we do it? And you're like, oh my gosh, man, like, but we need that part because that's what makes the world so tight knit and so they create a pattern. And the other part about introverted thinkers is that they cross combine things. So when you think of people that came up with like a cure for something or someone who designed the light bulb or something, 9 times out of 10, the design that they ended up finding came from something completely separate that they learned somewhere else that had a similar pattern. So everything that they're going into great detail about is always going into this data bank. And the
observations.
Exactly. All these non-emotional observations are going into a data bank to where when they're presented with a new problem, they can always look for a similar pattern that they can go back to that can be a good fit for it.
So sorry, what letters are those?
So that is introverted thinking, which is generally working with extroverted feelings. So for the people out there, it's introverted thinking.
Yeah, so it's one of the functions for people that are like INTPs.
Mm-hmm. ISTPs.
Who else has introverted thinking as a strong function?
Yep. So you have INTPs, ISTPs. Let me see. ISFJs, ESFJs, INFJs. Yep, ISFJs.
It's so interesting. So so Sadia, my wife just joined the room, and she's an ISFJ, and I noticed this attention to detail, let's call it, that pops up everywhere. So I don't know if Sadia, if you have any question about this, but could you maybe connect it to how it ties in with ISFJs?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that would be great. I was just thinking if this was me as you were talking.
Yeah, no, this is great that we actually have an introverted thinker on the line, Dominant. thinker on the line because there was a lot of introverted feeling going on out there. I want to balance this good that's balanced out. But so with ISFJs, the only difference now is that they lead with extroverted feeling over the introverted thinking, but they use both, right? And they have both of these functions right in the middle. So they work very well together. So the thing about ESFJs is they are very
ISFJs.
I'm sorry, ISFJs is that they are very detail oriented, right? But it's about what they get lost in. That's probably a little bit different, you know. So for them, it might be they might get lost in moments that happened in the past since they have because their first function is introverted sensing. So for any of the ISFJs out there, you lead with introverted sensing, then you have extroverted feeling, then you have introverted thinking, and then you have extroverted intuition. So I know that's for people who know what that is, whatever, who don't, is fine. But to explain it, it's very much looking at what has worked. It's very much going deep into keeping things the same to a degree or keeping a continuity in the environment that is very detailed and that's effective. So they can find themselves a lot of the time paying attention to past moments, past things that worked, making sure to have really good habits, paying close detail to their body and how their body feels. It's very much a grounding uh, kind of energy, I would say, because your introverted sensing is all about continuity. It's about making sure that everything in your environment moves at a nice pace and rate in which there's comfortability and where there's familiarity. And when you combine that with introverted thinking, it's now wanting to make that continuity even better and even more efficient and even more detailed. So that's kind of like the non-emotional side of the
It
ISFJ.
sounds like they couple together really powerfully.
Yeah, they actually do because the extroverted feeling that the ISFJ has and the extroverted intuition is very much more how they're able to be versatile. You know, as we mentioned, you know, you have judging and perceiving functions. So their judging side is, look, I want to keep things in the environment stable, effective, safe, um, and just clean. But on the but when it comes to their perceiving functions, which is kind of like go with the flow, it's a good conversation, being around good energy, being in a family, the things that ground them externally are going to be, um, you know, they have that extroverted feeling where they can communicate, talk, enjoy themselves, be in environments that are comfortable. So it's like a tug and pull. Like they also are a little open to new ideas, but it's like a battle between, okay, what's calling me to like move towards it and enjoy myself versus, okay, what's safe? What do I need to do? What do I need to take care of? So it's always this balance going on, and generally they're going to be more so comfortable on the side of safety, of familiarity, of consistency, and every now and then they'll like to let go and have fun. So it's this kind of nice balance that you'll see with ISFJs. And you tell me if you resonate with any of this, Sadia.
Yeah, all of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's really good.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can second it.
So there we go.
I feel like I'm just like textbook ISFJ.
Wow.
I keep trying to find something that I'm not.
Beautiful. And see, that's the good thing about introverted thinking. Introverted thinking is a judging function, right? And because that's what makes it so accurate is that it's always trying to chop down external like extroverted thinking. Honestly, it's always trying to chop down extroverted thinking to get to the core truth. So it makes sense that that you said like I'm trying to find something off about this. You know what I mean? Because now on one level it's like, oh, why are you trying to do that? That's if you want to get your feelings involved. If you take the feeling out of it, that's actually exactly what you want to do in order to have a high level of accuracy. You know, so you can't just throw a new idea at an introverted thinker and expect it to be accepted. They're gonna look for any inconsistencies because it's almost like a puzzle piece that has to fit perfectly. If it doesn't fit perfectly, then it's not. Then something is still off mathematically when it comes to solving.
I'm constantly looking for like what could be wrong with the situation.
Wow. So like that helps us because introverted feelers, we're kind of always trying to find the good in every situation. But on one level, that's nice, but on another level, that can be a detriment. So you really see how these types, and it's great that you two are a great example as a couple together because that's how types can balance each other out. Especially with good communication. That's what's great about MBTI is like the more that you're able to understand your partner's type or people who think differently than you, instead of combating them and trying to wonder why you two can't think the same, you'll actually realize that you two are two sides to a puzzle of greatness, because she can see what you can't and he can see what she can't. So that's what we're looking with any good organization for the people out there. They're gonna not have a bunch of people with the same type. So if any successful business, you want your introverted thinkers doing accounting, finances. You want your extroverted thinkers or your introverted feelers maybe figuring out, all right, how do we have a good, comfortable work environment? How do we communicate to the outside audience? And your introverted thinkers will be able to craft different things. So everyone kind of fits a different role that best suits their strengths based on their archetype. So we're supposed to use this as a team rather than battling each other because we see things differently.
Right, right. I wanted to ask. I was reading that there are there are some parts where I'm like strong, and then some parts where I'm weak, and then there's like ways to kind of strengthen the
Yeah.
parts you're weak in.
Yeah.
So, like, what areas should an ISFJ like work on?
Well, that's a great question. So I guess a good place, because with improving your functions, it's about gradually doing it. Because it's like these functions are embedded in us. So it's a nice balance that we want to look for. Like, you know what I mean? Where you're not expecting to become like an introverted feeler dominant overnight or anything, but things that you can do. Number one is practicing the art of kind of letting go, which might be really annoying. But a good way to start, a really good thing to start that I think for all introverted thinking dominant types, something that might help you is asking yourself, how do I feel right now? That's a big thing you can do is how do I feel? And actually try to sit with it until you actually find the reason. Because I can see a lot of introverted thinkers, even if they say, how do I feel right now? Nah, whatever, who cares? Let me do something else.
The thing is a lot of the times I can't pinpoint one emotion.
Mm-hmm.
It's a bunch of emotions happening at once.
Exactly. And what makes it feel like a bunch of emotions is that because you haven't used introverted feeling consistently enough, it's like whenever these random feelings come, you don't really know where to go first. So it just feels like a lot of emotions. Whereas introverted feelers, we'll get that same feeling, but then we'll break it down. Like, okay, probably feeling this way because of that. And then this. So a good place to start is to just pay attention to one. And a good way to do it is like, okay, I feel some type of way right now. Try to find one thing that might be causing it. You don't got to figure out all of them, but you might be like, well, I do have a class tonight, or I did have a long day at work, and just start there. Because now you're building that emotional intelligence a little bit where it's like, okay, at least I know one thing that triggers this kind of feeling. And you kind of just do one at a time. And you're not expected to know every feeling, but it's just a good practice for you to start playing with introverted feeling and seeing, oh, okay, now. Because then guess what? When your friend's annoyed, you'd be like, well, hey, maybe it's because you were at work a lot this week. Because you noticed in yourself that, well, man, I felt this way when I was working really hard this week. So just try to start with tapping into why do I feel this way? And don't let yourself just zoom past it, because here's the thing, the more that you zoom past it and don't identify those emotions, you begin to build like a snowball effect to where so much time goes by and you've ignored so many feelings that have been trying to tell you something. Eventually they catch up to you and they just slam you. Like this little moment that annoyed you, that a moment.
And then you just have a breakdown.
Yeah, and then you have a breakdown because
that happens like once a month.
Exactly, right? That's what introverted feelers, we don't want to let any one bad feeling bypass us because we know that the feelings aren't going anywhere, right? So they're going to catch up to us, and if we don't identify them, we'll get slammed with a bunch of them, and then guess what? it would be so many different emotions we won't even know what's the main cause anymore. So for you, you don't need to do it the same way introverted feelers do, where we need to pinpoint every little emotion, but at least you'll be giving homage to the emotions, because if you ignore them, it's almost like ignoring your children or something. Like they're yelling at you for a reason. They want that attention. They want to talk to you. So it's like kind of treat them like kids. Like, all right, let's talk about this. Let's figure out what's going on so that you can relax, because they're not gonna stop yelling. They might fade away. They might fade away, but they're always gonna come back around. So that's something that all introverted thinkers can definitely do as a practice to begin to start getting understanding what their emotions are trying to tell them.
This is great. Thank you so much.
Oh yeah, no problem. Happy you resonated with some of that.
On point. On point.
Awesome.
Much everything you said.
Awesome. And then I'm guessing for introverted feelers out there, we gave one technique, which was like practice like looking at patterns without having an emotional feeling about it. A good place to start might be a car or a beautiful painting, or, and go and deep dive into it. And just like how with introverted thinkers, they might be like, I don't feel like going into my emotions. I can keep going forward. That's how introverted feeler will feel when it comes to like going into depth or detail on a certain subject. They'll be like, I don't feel like looking at this car any longer. I get it. It's a red car. It's like, no, hold on. That car has like 150 parts, right? You're just driving the car. That's that extroverted thinking. You're at the end goal. Oh, you're just driving the car and you're just taking it for granted. But there's a whole world in that car. What were you going to say, Rev?
Yeah, John, what's interesting though is like even in the idea of doing this,
Mm-hmm.
I think about what is my motivation for doing it. Like, why do I care about it?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it's about, I guess I'm trying to find the emotion that will push me to do that.
Yeah.
Whereas you're saying, like, for these other introverted thinkers, like, there doesn't necessarily have to be an internal emotional drive.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm-hmm. So I guess that kind of brings me back, curious for, like, ISFJs, what is it that actually, like, at the core drives their motivation?
It's so essentially, right, whatever you, and this is kind of deep, but whatever you pay attention to, it grows. So like wherever energy goes, it grows, right? Wherever attention flows, whatever, right? So essentially, as an introverted thinker, they've spent time putting their energy toward noticing details and patterns, and it's given them back a lot of data, right? And that's where they've viewed it as the most survival thing, or the thing that is driving them. So they get energy actually from doing this, from noticing details and trying to figure something out. They're gaining energy, whereas we lose energy. We've gotten a lot of energy from paying attention to our inner feelings and our values and noticing what triggers people, and that's given us energy. And we've gotten less energy going into details, because guess what? The habit of our mind is more comfortable and it gets more energy because it's built a habit of like putting our energy toward our inner feelings. So with introverted thinkers, they've built a pattern of getting more energy of noticing details, right? So before a word is even said, it begins with just looking at something and getting energy from it. So it's just a matter of where is our attention going, So for us, our attention is always going within our bodies, generally, as an introverted feeler, within our cells, within our head. And that's where we're the most comfortable, and we feel less comfortable putting that energy on external things. And if you really want to tap into introverted thinking, it's about external things, like not caring about what's going on in here and actually just being lost in the environment. And so I feel like the more that you build that habit of like practicing doing that, it will start to show you the value that you'll get from it, which is you'll start noticing that you can put certain patterns together. You'll start noticing that, like, oh wow, like the thing that I did to study that car actually helped me with, let's say, like working out. Everything is connected, and that's one thing introverted thinkers are very smart about, is don't ever take something for granted, because that painting you're looking at, introverted feeling, because it likes to rush so much, because that introverted thinking, it thinks there's no value there, right? But little does it know that there's going to be a point in time where that thing that they were lost looking at, trying to learn about, is going to actually end up helping them in another time in life. So I guess it's really us introverted feelers learning to actually trust that we can learn from our environment. I think the thing with introverted feeling, it's so people oriented to the point where it only wants to speak with humans or with animals, but it doesn't want to speak with the television or the car or the inanimate objects in our life. The plants are actually alive, but plants don't talk back to us, right? So we ignore plants. We ignore um, anything that doesn't have like a brain, or you know what I mean? And it's like, but everything is speaking to you. And that is something that I guess for introverted feelers, there's magic in that. Everything you look at is speaking to you. Everything, whether through its colors, through its design. And by getting out of your body and looking outside, you'll actually learn that there's a whole other world
Yeah.
that can teach you.
Yeah. Sadia, does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it does. So I need to like pay attention more to like inanimate objects.
Well, you already do.
Oh, I
Which
do.
is like, this is like for you because you already notice the details and things, and so I was asking him like how, like, because for me I don't notice details, and I'm not motivated to, and so Johnny was breaking down how for introverted thinkers there's like an innate motivation in noticing the details because you start to see how it'll come back to aid you.
Oh, I see. Okay, I was confused. I'm trying to like learn what my functions are.
Beautiful.
I keep getting them mixed up.
Yeah, that starting time in MBTI is a little confusing. So keep fighting through, but eventually you'll start noticing those patterns. But would you say that in your experience you've noticed times where you like something that you know that you paid a lot of detail to in the past, it came back in the future to actually okay.
Yeah, that's literally my life.
Wow. That is so awesome.
I tell Rafi this all the time that all the thoughts and everything that I say, they're not actually mine.
Wow.
They're from something I heard in the past.
Wow. That is amazing.
Yeah.
That is really awesome because for us, you're like literally in a different world. Like I'm like wow, because I'm like, imagine what we can gain as introverted feelers. That like balances out life.
There's no like originality in me.
Okay.
You know what I mean? That's something I see in Rafi. Like everything that I am or that I know is something that I've learned from, or
exactly.
That I've seen in the past.
Exactly.
And I know it works, so I'm going to keep doing it.
Exactly.
But I can't like think of things on my own. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's so interesting. Yeah, because that once again that goes back to that introverted sensing with the introverted thinking, right? And Rafi has the complete opposite. He has extroverted thinking with extroverted intuition, which and extroverted intuition is all about like random ideas, right? So it births a lot of new ideas that aren't as detailed, but you can feel them. You know what I mean? Because I can imagine anything you say, Rafi, is an ENFP. You feel it first, and the idea is so unique, you share it. And what that does is the idea. What makes the idea fresh is just that because you felt it, you know that somebody has a chance to feel it because you felt it first. So it goes back to that introverted is always first, extroverted always second. It's yin and yang. So it's that you feel it first, it originates within you, and then they feel it. So in this case, Rafi, like it feels it's unique and it's coming from a fresh place because you felt it and it was a random idea. And you'll begin to have more of those moments, Sadia, when you continue to practice like seeing how you feel. And you're gonna get random thoughts and just embrace that. Like, I don't know, I feel like whatever. Okay, that's fresh though. That's fresh because guess what? Nobody gave you a book, or nobody told you how to feel. You know what I mean? Or you know what I mean? You get a chance. Your feelings are always going to be spontaneous. So it's that chaos side. You have chaos and order, and your chaos side comes from your a lot of the time your intuition and your feelings, and then the structure side is going to come from your thoughts and your environment and what you know. So we're balancing. It's that balance of chaos and order that's playing in our own minds. Such a beautiful yin and yang experience. Sometimes beautiful, sometimes not so pretty. But we'll just call it beautiful because I have introverted feelings, so I'm gonna make it sound good.
Wow, that's great. No, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask about a lot of the times. Sometimes I'll read about something, or like someone tells me what they're going through, and it's almost as if I can feel their emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I talk about this with Rafi, he'll say like, "Oh, like for him, it's more like he can just imagine what they must be going through.
Yeah.
But he can't really like put himself in and feel it. But for me, it like I just start crying on the spot, or
mm-hmm.
like I'm incredibly happy for them,
mm-hmm.
like that. I don't know. So I have a hard time controlling my emotions.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting, because I think that's a similar experience with a lot of introverted thinkers who have that type, especially and with extroverted feelers as well. It's an
because as ISFJ, she's an extroverted feeler.
Yeah, she actually has more extroverted feeling than introverted thinking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, what were you gonna say, Rafi?
This is where I see it as it's like introverted feelers, we feel our own emotions, where extroverted feelers will actually feel the other person's emotions.
Exactly. So introverted feelers, our emotions trigger us to try to make other people feel some type of way. Extroverted feelers are triggered by other people's emotions, which makes them want to take action. So we're coming from two different sides. And a good example of it, it's empathy versus sympathy. Or I won't even use that example.
We were talking about this.
Yeah, it's like, so let's say somebody breaks their leg, right? And let's say if an introverted feeler walks by, they're gonna feel like, especially let's say it's a gruesome looking leg, right? Introverted feeler's gonna be like, like his leg looks so bad, and then he's gonna feel like his leg feels some type of, he's like, and he's gonna touch his leg like, that doesn't look that good. An extroverted feeler isn't gonna feel anything internally. It's gonna trigger them to want to help them, because that they're gonna know like, oh, that person probably feels awful, So it triggers them generally to take an action. Not to say both parties won't do either, but in terms of what's more dominantly felt, extroverted feelers are generally your firemen, firefighters. They want to serve the environment, military, cops. They want to help save the environment, because the negative things that they view or that people experience triggers them to want to take an action. Introverted feelers are going to more so feel the problems in the world and be like, man, we need to stand up against this because I would hate to feel like that. So that's just a prime example of where introverted feeling and extroverted feeling are coming from two sides of the feeling experience. One is responding to the feelings of the world. That's extroverted feeling. Introverted feeling is experiencing the feelings of the world. That's introverted feeling.
So I'm extroverted feeling.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay, but I feel it.
Exactly, you feel it.
I think I do.
No, you do feel it, and what triggers you to feel it is, but that's the question: is what's the cause point? So the cause point of what you're feeling is the external environment.
Oh, I see.
And then for the introverted feelers like me and Rafi, what's causing us to feel, it's emanated within us, and then we're kind of responding to what's happening. So that's the only difference is you'll find yourself lost probably in someone else's experience or feeling. Whereas we find ourselves lost in kind of like our own feelings. And it's almost like other people's feelings kind of take us out of our own feeling. So, so that's kind of the difference, so it's funny because with introverted feelers, it's like you're kind of removed a little bit. Like even though you care so much, you're kind of more removed than extroverted feelers.
It's actually kind of selfish.
Yeah, it's a little bit selfish. Like and not in a bad way, but it's very much like, I'll give you an example. Like, introverted feelers can be at a club, I mean, at like a parade, and be like, all right, this kind of sucks. But everyone could be jumping around having the time of their life. And an introverted feeler could be like, I just want to go in my house and kind of just like enjoy my. Whereas an extroverted feeler, from what I've seen, they'll be so lost in that parade, or they'll go to the parade and feel like whatever, but they're like, everyone's jumping around having a good time, and now they're getting energized, and now they're like lost. So in the environment. So when you think of people who like to go to concerts, people who like to go to parades, generally there'll be a lot of extroverted feelers in these environments because it's a group feel environment, you know? Whereas introverted feelers are very much like, it's about how I individually feel. So it's kind of like, okay, it's just a give and take. Like, okay, who cares that much about how you feel, introverted feeler? Like, this is how the group feels. But there's like a good and bad for everything, because let's say everyone enjoys freaking killing, let's say everybody has a group thought about, we don't like one race. It will be, you need an introverted feeler there to be like, look guys, like, this isn't right, like, that we're doing this to other races, because I don't care how the group feels, I know this isn't right and I feel that way. So that's the power, that's the good thing about introverted feelers. But then when we think about, let's say there's a burning house and there's a cat and an older lady there, extroverted feeler is going to be like, I need to go towards the overall situation and fix that. I need to fix what's outside of me. Whereas an introverted feeler is going to be like, dang, I don't want to burn in there. Like, it's kind of risky. Like, I don't know. So you kind of need an extroverted feeler to be like, the person out there probably feels horrible up there. Like, I'm going. So we need each other, but you just see how we kind of fill in the blanks for one another.
Yeah, I think also having the introvert feeling is what helps me with like being a therapist. Is that I don't get lost or I don't drown in my clients' experiences.
Absolutely. Exactly. You have that space from the situation.
Yeah, it's like a level of detachment.
Exactly. But then let's flip it. Let's say you work at a job that you're bored there all day, but you get paid really well and you're good at what you do. An introverted thinker is more willing to do that because they might be so lost in the process every day of being good at what they do. They don't really care about how they feel the same way. Whereas an introverted feeler, it's like, man, you're getting paid well, like, but it's like, I don't feel happy here though. A lot of introverted thinkers are like, you don't feel happy here. Like, you're making 150,000 a year, whatever. Like that's so selfish. Like, like, or the family wants you to do this for the family business, and you're like, I don't want to do the family business because I feel like. So that's where, introverted. That's where it can kind of flip. So yeah, this kind of touches on like the different ways of how introverted feeling and introverted thinking work. I think this was really cool, in regard to like how these two functions are on two sides of the spectrum, but how we can learn so much from both, and how we can all do the work to kind of work on our counterpart. So if you're an introverted feeler, start working with introverted thinking a little bit. If you're an introverted thinker, start trying to work with introverted feeling a little bit. It's just going to it's going to help push your brain a little bit. And I guess, Rafi, any final words, Adia, anybody on the call, Assad, any final ideas, or did it trigger anything in you? How do you feel about everything we talked about?
Yeah, no, I think it was great. I think it was great having my wife join too.
Yeah.
Because we can kind
of. Yeah, this was so helpful.
Awesome. Thank you for joining, by the way.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I'm able to see, because we live together, so we're able to see how the other person works, and we notice how it's different from ourselves. And it's just really interesting to see kind of the two sides of the same coin.
Awesome. And I guess, on my side, I just closing out, I think, man, this triggers a lot of myself. That's why I love these calls. I think this just speaks to the power of, like, for myself, for the people out there listening, like, realizing how much data the whole entire world is giving you. Like, you can learn from anything. It doesn't just have to be a person or a yogi. Like, the environment is always talking to us, giving us symbols, giving us signs. And I feel like for any of those people out there that have introverted feeling, and you're always kind of you're always focused on kind of your world, take some time to look out there, be sensitive to the environment. That's what I heard somebody describe very well. That was an extroverted feeling, dominant. He was like, I'm very sensitive to the environment. So he's like, even when I walk in the mall, if I see like dirt on the ground and like a mop is out, like I can feel that. And I'm like, somebody needs to move that mop. Like somebody needs to clean this place up a little bit. That there's a lot of power in that, because you now begin to create a space, that's communicating very detailed things. And this is for the people with introverted feeling that want to create spaces that, you can really create a space that's saying specific things, create a world for yourself that's very specific and deliberate, and you just realize how holistic it all is. So that's what I just say on my end. And aside from that, man, thanks everybody for listening, man. I definitely love to keep these up and tap into different subjects. So I appreciate you guys listening. And
Likewise.
really awesome call, Rafi. Really awesome call. I'm happy you triggered this, and I have this recorded, so I'm gonna make sure that this is on 5D transformations. For everybody that's on 5D transformations, check out the other MBTI videos. And also, Rafi, is there anything where they can find you? Any of your information, any of your work?
Not right now. Unless you want to be a client. But if you do, and if you're living in Virginia, you can go to wellnessthroughcounseling.com, and you can learn more about me over there.
Awesome. Alrighty. So it's been a pleasure. It's been a pleasure, and we'll be back soon. Aside from that, have a lovely weekend, and we'll be reaching out to you all again with some more MBTI magic.
All right, bye. Thank you.
No problem. Peace.